I ain't gonna lie, chat. There's been so many wrestlers that I didn't see get caught up in the worst way possible. I'm not finna even hold you, chat. So we finna go back down. We finna react to this though.
One of the best net positives of having NXT as a WWE developmental system is that you can pick a brand new favourite wrestler and go, oh my gosh, one day they are going to be called up to Raw or SmackDown, and what is WWE going to do? Now really all that matters is that we do get there eventually, which sometimes isn't the case. So hello my friends, I hope you are doing well, because on behalf of What Culture Wrestling, I am Simon Miller. This is 7 wrestlers WWE called up in the first very possible. Number 7, DIY. So some people are just made for each other, and you do see that a lot in professional wrestling. And yes, of course, we're going to take Tommaso Ciampa and Johnny Gargano and push them together.
Granted, they became tag champions though, but then again, it's like they should have been multiple tag team champions. I think with the feuds they had in NXT was pretty good in my personal opinion. It probably was like at that time people were literally making the comparisons to like Shawn Michaels, Triple H. So the fact that they couldn't, revitalize that and rejuvenate that and put that on the main roster, I don't understand how they could not do that. And now we know Tommaso Ciampa, he's in AEW. He's doing his own thing. He just got a match with Chris Jericho, which he won yesterday at the time recording doing the stream. He beat Chris Jericho at Beach Break. And now all you got Johnny Gargano doing is planking. You're telling me the guy that was Johnny Takeover, Johnny Wrestling, at that time probably one of the best in the world when it came to in-ring, a believable babyface. Some people make the comparison a second coming of Daniel Bryan. You're telling me he goes from that to planking? Bro, come on, bro. What are we doing?
If you have never seen their feud in NXT, you need to do that yesterday. Oh my gosh, it was fantastic. And even that cinematic match. Listen, it was the pandemic. Nobody knew what they were doing. But all things considered, I give it a plus. But it was too long. It really is the stuff of legend though, and arguably the best thing that WWE has ever produced down in NXT. DIY were also a great unit, and they always have been, but that's where the problem was. They had already been embroiled in one of the most bitter, fierce, emotionally draining rivalries for over 2 years when Vince McMahon went, nobody cares about that. I would prefer to have them as a duo, so we just did that and hoped that we wouldn't notice. But of course we noticed. We're massive geeks and nerds. It was just such a shame because of course you want that continuity. And even if you were happy to ignore it, eventually we should have broken these two guys up and redone that program on the main roster. But of course we didn't. And really, while DIY did have some great matches, the stories never really got to where they should have been. I mean, if nothing else, it just told people you do not need to worry about what happens on NXT unless you're exclusively going to watch NXT. It also created a fear that any kind of persona or story that was being created down at NXT could be forgotten about at a moment's notice. And once again, what is professional wrestling?
Speaking of which, if y'all had to come up with a Mount Rushmore for like NXT right now, like who would y'all have on y'all Mount Rushmore for NXT? Because for me, I'm not gonna lie, like it's hard to kind of come up with like my 4, but like Johnny Gargano is on my Mount Rushmore for a fact. I gotta put Johnny, I gotta put Adam Cole, I gotta put Finn Balor. I mean, those are 3. Maybe you can make the case for like a Tommaso considering like his heel work, but like, bro, I think for me, I gotta go Johnny, I gotta go Adam Cole, Kevin Owens, Finn Balor. That's like my 4 from like Mount Rushmore. And if I would say honorable mention, I would put Tommaso Ciampa, but I know a lot of people would put Tommaso Ciampa in like their Mount Rushmore for NXT for sure.
Investing, you don't want to live in fear that's about to be thrown out the window. Number 6, Odyssey Jones. Now, Odyssey Jones is a weird one because he was in the WWE system for such a long time, people didn't really know what WWE was going to do. It's not like he was a Sol Ruka or Obafemi either, where people were desperate to see him on the main roster. We assumed it was going to happen at some point, but once again, there was a big question mark over the top. After suffering defeat to Dijak on the 4th of April 2023 episode of NXT, however, Jones from nowhere did find himself being called up to Monday Night Raw. It kind of felt like he could have done more stuff down at NXT to just give him a bit more of a concrete base, but even putting him in the New Day, alright, that was different, and people started to speculate maybe this is how we get some cracks in that group, and don't forget what we did in the latter part of 2024. It still felt totally random though because it came from nowhere, and then yes, just as this was getting going, he was let go based on activity that happened away from the ring in August 2024. So if you are keeping track, that was around about 3 weeks. And nobody really knows what did go on outside of the ring. I don't want to speculate here because it's not fair and there are wildly different stories out there. But given that this list is about the worst possible call-ups, I mean, getting called up, being put in one of the most iconic groups of all time, and then vanishing straight away? It's just kind of weird. Number 5, EC3. So EC3 felt like somebody that Vince McMahon would have looked at and gone, oh my gosh, this is everything I want in a future WWE champion, and gone out of his way to make it work. Look at a Randy Orton, right? Everyone thought that was going to happen with Ethan Carter III. I mean, he was so made for what WWE wanted on the main roster at the time, it almost felt like he shouldn't have even been in NXT, and that maybe even it wasn't that good of a fit. Some people are just built for specific things. It also helped as well that EC3 had been a major player in TNA because it showed he got all this sports entertainment nonsense and did have it down, which is why when the trigger was finally pulled and it didn't work, well, it was totally baffling and, dare I said,
I don't know how they didn't do nothing with EC3. You would think they would do something with EC3. You would think that they was going to do something with EC3, to be fair with y'all. Like, I'm being so serious. There's no way they don't do anything with EC3. And then he goes to the main roster. He didn't even compete for any of the titles, I don't think. He didn't compete for the US or IC. All they had him, they didn't do anything with him. They had him do this feud with Dean Ambrose, now known as John Moxley, on his way out. And then that didn't do him any favors, and then he started doing 24/7 title stuff. So it's like, as soon as I seen that, I knew it was over.
Because for whatever reason, EC3 was stripped of all his true assets, including being able to talk on a microphone. I mean, if you want to say the number one thing he had was promos, I would agree with you. But basically, his gimmick was one of a mute. I mean, he barely said anything. As such, his stature on the main roster and reputation with fans started to go the opposite way, because it'd be like having an ice cream and giving it to someone, but telling that person,
get exclusive Mortal Kombat 2 wallpapers for your PC.
you're not allowed to eat the ice cream, so now you've got the ice cream as some kind of art. Nobody wants that, you want to stick it in your face. You could tell that EC3 was getting frustrated about this as well, especially when he just had to chase the 24/7 championship every single week, when eventually he was let go from the company in less than a year. And listen, you cannot put this on EC3's shoulders. Somebody should have allowed him to be the best version of himself.
Exactly.
Otherwise, what are we doing to begin with? So this really was dumb. I mean, he did have momentum from NXT, and once again, we threw it down the toilet. Number 4, Karrion Kross. It's quite clearly Triple H saw a lot in Karrion Kross and basically made him the main character of NXT. I mean, he would crush fools, and once again, it kind of felt like when he does get called up to the main roster, as long as we copy and paste this, everything is going to be fine. This is where you can probably hazard.
That's all they had to do was just continue what they were doing on NXT and just bring it up to the main roster and just expound it upon it, but they didn't do that. I'm seeing what he's been doing in MLW, and I still am baffled how they couldn't know and understand what to do with Karrion Kross. Like, this was a guy that was presented as a presence and a force to be reckoned with in NXT, right? He was NXT champion twice, I believe. And then he goes to the main roster. They start changing everything about him in his first initial run. He gets released. He gets brought back only to do nothing. And then they did the whole Final Testament thing, but that really didn't go anywhere, let's be fair. And then he got released again. So it's like, how are we supposed to get invested in characters if you're not really giving us stories or giving them stories to be proud of and doing something that they can sink their teeth into? Because it comes off as a thing. It's like, if the WWE doesn't care about these characters and showing us why we should care about these characters, then we're not going to. It really comes down to the simple thing is if you don't care, then why should we?
I guess that Triple H and Vince McMahon saw things very differently, because when push did come to shove and Karrion Kross did get called up, well, to this day, even though it happened years ago, I have no idea what anybody was thinking. Now, do not forget, when he did debut on Raw, he was still the NXT champion, but WWE decided to butcher his entrance. I mean, where was Scarlett? She just wasn't there, and there was no monochrome weird colour thingamajig. That was out the window too. He was also put in the ring with Jeff Hardy, who was not exactly finding his feet at that time. He'd only won 2 matches in 6 months, both against Cedric Alexander. It did make everybody assume that Karrion Kross was just going to beat Mr. Hardy, but nope, Jeff beat him in less than 2 minutes. So not only did that basically tell the main audience you don't need to care about this guy.
And it's like you bury your own NXT champion in the process. I get it. It was cool. It was a cool moment to see Jeff Hardy come back, especially with the No More Words theme. But it's like, but then you just ruined your top guy of NXT. So going back, people didn't care about him. When he went back to NXT, people did not care.
But it made the entire NXT roster look ridiculous because once again, this was the champion. Let's not forget either that when we tried to hit reset on this, Karrion Kross came out dressed this way. I don't know whether he's meant to be a gladiator, I don't know whether he's meant to be a soldier, but he does look like some kind of a gimp. I shouldn't have said that, but it could be one of the worst rebrandings in WWE history. And sooner rather than later, Karrion Kross got let go once again through no fault of his own. What kind of booking was this? You meant to take somebody and push the strengths and hide the weaknesses, and we just went and made a bunch of pap-up. Number 3, the Ascension. So I will die on this hill, even though people like to argue it sometimes. If WWE wants to get on the main roster,
And this
just
is the thing with the Ascension. Ascension had potential because like they were booked strong in NXT as the NXT Tag Team Champions, and they held those championships for 270-ish days, something like that. But like they could have really been something. They really could have been something special, and they could have really stood out. I think, especially at the time they were on when they got moved up to main roster, and this was like 2015. So they could have stood out as far as like how they present themselves and their characters and stuff like that. But it didn't go anywhere, bro. It really didn't, and it failed fast to the point where they would start doing stuff with Stardust and all that type of stuff. It's just, bro.
And how they were treated on NXT, everything would have been fine, but instead Vince McMahon basically went, we should make you a parody of old school wrestling, and JBL on commentary is just gonna take shots. Because I absolutely remember seeing them down in NXT and just thinking they were so damn cool, and they had a badass entrance, when deep down in your tum-tum you could be like, oh my gosh, why don't we just sell these guys like the second coming of the Road Warriors? I understand the Legion of Doom are some of the best of all time, but even if you can get a tiny teeny piece of magic from that, you're gonna do alright. The Ascension were also former NXT Tag Team Champions, so you could have thrown that in the vault as well. And even on their last match down in NXT, they decimated Enzo and Cass in 60 seconds because they were meant to be a throwback and you were meant to be intimidated by them. It was like Demolition and the Ultimate Warrior pushed into one. When they eventually got to SmackDown though, yes, the commentary team of Michael Cole and JBL laughed at them going, ha ha ha, look at them ripping off all these tag teams from yesteryear, and let's not pretend that the Ascension are as good as them, and it just became absolutely ludicrous. If you have been presented in a certain way in NXT and it has worked, why the flub would you get to Raw and SmackDown and do a 180? It just left their reputation in tatters too because they were never able to get their revenge, and then before they did get the released, they were basically cartoons. I have no idea what we were thinking. Number 2, Lars Sullivan. So given recent comments I did see about Lars Sullivan, I want to make it clear this is not a nice human being, not a nice individual, and in fact a lot of words that do come out of his mouth are borderline offensive, or screw that, full on offensive, so we shouldn't really give him the time of day. Still though, a few years ago when he was in NXT, he was booked like a beast.
I'm not going to say anything about it.
He went on a 6-match unbeaten streak in his first solo run, including defeating Roderick Strong, and look at his first takeover booking. He was going after the North American Championship in a star-studded ladder match. Somebody pulled the trigger quick. There were some encouraging signs as well, because it felt like Sullivan was doing well in NXT, and again, look at him. That is somebody that's always going to succeed on the main roster, because if anybody liked old-school, tough, weird-looking big guys, it was Vince McMahon. So it was no surprise when rumours began to surface that he was being considered for a monster push on the main roster, and at one point was even considered to face John Cena at WrestleMania 35. Thank goodness we didn't do that because the cracks started to appear. No, I'm not talking about the fact that Lars apparently suffered from extreme anxiety, because we can all understand that, and given that the WWE is a global brand, it's perfectly reasonable that somebody could be backstage thinking to themselves, oh my gosh, this is a big opportunity, and I don't want to let myself or my work colleagues down. He also wasn't somebody that had been on the independent circuit, so all of a sudden had gone from nothing to everything, and all this did mean there was a mini delay. Not like it mattered though, because eventually he did debut by attacking Kurt Angle on Raw, and it's flipping Kurt Angle, man. He had recently retired, but he was a flipping super duper whooper star. He also went after Rey Mysterio and the Hardys to sort of get this gimmick over when things got way worse and were basically unforgivable. Because past remarks of a racist, sexist and homophobic variety began to surface, and genuinely some of these were absolutely appalling, when he also suffered a knee injury after just his second match, and he was going to be out for 16 months. Instead, WWE decided to cut their losses after 3, and really that does go back to these message boards posts. If you are going to put these kind of opinions out there, well, you absolutely do not deserve to have a run in WWE.
Nope.
Number 1, Dominic Dijak. So
Bro.
Dominic Dijak was one of the most...
This could have been a huge star for the main roster, and it still irritates me that he gets called up and gets released. I don't even know if he competed on main event. I'm not even talking about main event, but like the fact that they didn't have a feud or anything for him. When I think of that, it's like, why would you bring him to the main roster if you don't have a plan in place for him? It's just like, at that point, just leave him in NXT. He was having banger matches with NXT. I still think of the match that he had. I think it was Stand and Deliver 2024. I think it was 2024. It was him. What was it? Brooks Jensen or no, Josh Briggs. It was Josh Briggs, Obafemi, Dijak. That match was fire, bro. And the fact is, he gets called to the main roster and they do nothing with him at all. What are we talking about? This was a guy that was put in match of the year candidate with literally anybody they put him up against. They had the match with him and Keith Lee. That was a banger. Yeah, I know they did the whole thing with Retribution, but I'm talking when he went back down to NXT, he rejuvenated his career, and he was finding himself again. He gets brought back to the main roster, which could have been a second chance at the main roster, but they do nothing.
Popular performers that NXT had, but you kind of had the suspicion that maybe fans believed in him more than those behind the scenes. He was involved in title scenarios for the NXT North American and Tag Team titles without winning any of them, but even through all that, he remained incredibly popular with the audience because he was really good. I mean, you want to talk about big men slapping man meat and then flying around the ring? That's what Dijak could do. It was super exciting when he got called up to the main roster as well, before you realised he was going to be a part of Retribution. That stable felt like a massive misfire from the beginning, and also Dijak lost his cool name and got renamed T-Bar. This happened years ago, and I still don't understand what a T-Bar is. Most people could tell that Retribution was totally doomed, so surprise, surprise, eventually Dijak went back to NXT, when he got called up again, and WWE did nothing. I still don't understand this one. He basically was hanging out in the background when we learnt he had been let go. It was such a bizarre decision, because if anything, we needed brand new names on Raw or SmackDown. Dijak could go, and we didn't even give him an opportunity. It just meant both call-ups were absolutely done in the worst way possible, because you did not give him a chance. Remember when we made Mustafa Ali the head of Retribution for no reason whatsoever too? I don't know, man. And I guess the net positive is he did go back on the indie scene, and he's been totally smashing it ever since.
Yeah, he's been killing on the indies.
Still kind of living hope he does get one proper run.
Bro been killing on the indies, bro. He's been killing on the indies and everything like that. I know I think he's one half of the MLW like tag champions and stuff like that currently right now with Baron Corbin, but I think Baron's on his way back to WWE. I don't know if that's going to be a thing when it does happen again. I'm not too sure about that. We'll see. But yeah, I don't know. I'm not too sure. Him and Baron Corbin as a tag team, yeah. I know about that much for sure. In MLW. So, we'll see. We'll see. But you guys, I was gonna record another video with you guys, but I do have to get going. So I was gonna record one more video. Maybe I'll just record it or do it the next time we do a stream like this, because I do plan to do another stream like this probably every week with you guys, where we'll just react to stuff. Maybe next week I'll do some horror stuff, some more wrestling stuff. I make sure both. Maybe I'll do another try not to laugh as well. So we'll see. But that is the end of the stream, you guys. And everything like that. I appreciate everybody that did tune in. And everything.